So, Sternbergs Triangle theory of love. Consider it. See what you think. There are other theories of love. I'm not going to present those in here. You'll have to take another class if you want to see kind of a comparison of those. Again, Psych of Emotion might be the place to go. And it is getting to be enrollment time, so it's offered every semester, looking for you this spring, right? For the online version of Psych of Emotion. Men, the romantic sex. What? According to who? Well, a couple things we observe, and notice that we're doing some gender stereotyping here. So can you find exceptions? Of course you can. But overall, or favorite term, all else being equal, men tend to be lonelier and more depressed after a breakup. They're more likely to believe that love alone will make a relationship work. And women are often more practical and say there's more to it than that. They love and like their lovers more than their best friends. And now notice that this becomes problematic because during a breakup, a man has not only lost his partner, his lover, but during a breakup, a man has often lost his best friend. And for women, you know, that's usually their best friend is their best friend, right? And so it's a different kind of story. Men tend to take longer to get over a lost love, to recover more slowly. Men tend to be more idealistic and less practical, and evolutionary theory abounds. We'll get to that in a little bit. Men fall in love more easily. Okay. So we often stereotype men as being kind of detached and impervious to emotion. That's not necessarily the case, right? And especially during a breakup, we can see where men might, in fact, take it a little, be a little more hard on men. Now, let's flip it around. Let's talk about not increasing love, but falling out of love. Now, falling out of love is not fun probably for anybody, but it may be wise. And it's like, think in terms of sunk cost. Do I want to continue in this relationship even though I'm not happy just because of the time I've invested in this relationship? At what point do we determine it's best probably just to cut and run? That is to declare it over and move on to a new chapter in our life, if you want to be cliche like that. If you're obsessed with a person who betrays your trust, I would take that as a big warning sign. Right? So this is like the robot in Lost in Space. Warning, Will Robinson. Warning, danger, danger. If someone is betraying your trust, then if they've done it once, and I'm going to give you 2 rules for psychology. These are my 2 most basic rules of psychology. First of all, you can't change people. People can change if they want to change, but you cannot change people. So that's rule number 1, and especially in the context of relationships, it's a big help to understand that. The second rule, the best predictor of future behavior, all else being equal, is past behavior. So let me repeat that. The best predictor for future behavior is past behavior. So if someone is cheated, odds are they will likely cheat again. Now they will say they won't, you know, and they will promise not to, but did the conditions that caused them to cheat the first time fundamentally change in the future? And often the answer to that question is no. So if someone betrays your trust, that's, you know, it is what it is. Either you're willing to accept it or don't accept it. But please go into it mindfully and with your eyes open. Now, if they're involved with someone who's draining you emotionally or financially, you better think twice. Because someone who is draining you emotionally or financially is, for lack of a better term, a taker. And do you want to continue to be taken from? And again, consider the 2 rules. You can't change people. Best predictor of future behavior, past behavior. Hey, if you're desperately in love with someone who doesn't return your feelings, at some point you got to kind of say, you know, I don't think this is going to do it. Right? Do I want to be chasing this person the rest of my life? Do I want to subject myself to the emotional upheaval of unrequited love? And think seriously about that. You know, if you want to go there, that's fine, but it ain't necessarily going to be a great thing. So Let's talk then about Levenger's theory of stages of relationship and kind of paralleling where we've been so far in the lecture. The first stage is attraction. So we got that. We talked about that with Festinger, among others, right? The next is the building. So this is that fun part of the relationship where it feels like we're taking off like a rocket ship. We are building. We are sharing. We are growing together. We are learning about each other. It's an amazing time in a relationship, right? And then it's down to business. Now it's continuation. And notice that continuation, if we talk in Sternberg's terms, we're starting to move to greater levels of commitment. Now, what else is possible? Well, deterioration and ending. So, thank you, Levenger. Let's take a look at the chart here then. Acquaintance, okay. Relationship starts with a mutual attraction, and I know many of you have been through this, right? And then the build-up, the couple engage in self-disclosure. This is self-disclosure facilitates the intimacy, right? And they become increasingly interdependent. So they begin to start seeing themselves not as two individuals, but as a couple, right? Where there's that mutual interdependence. Now, continuation, the lives become enmeshed and the relationship becomes consolidated. And it can become enmeshed with the purchase of a house or renting an apartment together, perhaps children, right? Making decisions like who's going to go to school and who's going to work or how those things are going to work out. But deterioration is a possibility in that there may be an imbalance of costs and rewards or a high number of risk factors, right? So if you discover your partner has a drug habit and is involved with the police or, you know, something heinous like that, right? That could be a problem. It could also be that, man, I put an awful lot into this relationship and I feel like I'm getting nothing out. And I've talked about this and it doesn't seem to change, so maybe it's time for me to just move on and try something new. And then ending. Deterioration may lead the couple just simply to end the relationship. Or, right, the relationship may deteriorate, people seek counseling or kind of frame the relationship and go back to continuation. So it can go either way. Questions? Should we talk a little bit about marriage? So marriage, what is it? Well, it's different in different cultures, but let's see if there's some commonalities. It's typically a legally and socially sanctioned union of sexually intimate adults. Now, the definition can vary, but I think that's a pretty good definition. Pretty general, not too constraining. Long-term partners, personal qualities are more important than physical traits. So if a marriage is going to work, it really is kind of consistent about values, right? Those types of qualities than the physical appearance. And let's face it, appearance for many of us erodes over time. Best not to bank on that. Traditionally, marriages included the notion of economic interdependence, right? So that finances are joined. Although in modern days, many couples are getting married and keeping their finances separate. But even like a shared domicile, a shared home, if we're both contributing 50-50 to the mortgage, there is some level of economic interdependence. Many couples throw it all into the same pot, right? And that just reflects differences in styles. Look who's come back. Hi, Rosie. Where have you been? Doing something important and cat-like? Common residence is typically shared, and that one is really common. It's uncommon to find married couples that do not share a residence. Sexual fidelity is usually a component of marriage, usually something that is agreed upon. Not every marriage. I know there are things called open marriages and such, but for most marriages, sexual fidelity is an expectation. Shared responsibility for raising the children. And note that that was one of the primary reasons for marriage quite often was children. And the idea of children, you know, the children get the father's name, etc. That was kind of the idea there. Now that has changed considerably over time, and I think we probably need to revisit the idea of marriage because marriage has fundamentally changed, not fundamentally, but it has gone through some evolution in this country, right? What typifies a successful marriage? What are some of the components? Well, each partner needs a well-developed identity. And notice, this is a critical aspect. Again, we return to Erickson. That is, we look at Erickson's 6-stage, identity versus isolation. I mean, I'm sorry. Intimacy versus isolation. We should really be going to Erickson's fifth stage, where we develop an identity that we can call our own, right? So we can share if we have an identity. High self-esteem is a big help here, right? Empathy, the ability to experience what your partner is experiencing, right? To understand that. So that comes with high emotional intelligence necessarily. An assumption of permanence, that we're in this for the long haul, that this is not something that we can call off at some point in the future, you know, on a whim, so to speak. That we got married because we plan to go the whole 9 yards. Now, mutual commitment, high degree of motivation to this mutual commitment, a desire to make marriage work, and that is sometimes maybe we're not the best partner we can be, and when our partner points that out, then we desire to make it better, that we bring this notion or concept of continuous improvement into our marriage. A willingness to expend personal time and effort to make sure that it does, right? Not just talk the game, but actually do it. Now, that's what successful marriages might contain. Let's consider predictors of marital success. Well, parents never divorced. See, divorce teaches me that divorce is possible. And if my parents get divorced, it becomes a more probable option for me. It's within the realm of possibilities. Okay? So if your parents never divorced, you never had that as part of your attachment model, so you may be more likely to prolong your marriage. Okay? Folks who suspend marriage and wait till they're older tend to have better marital success. Right? And I will share a little bit about myself. I probably shouldn't be lecturing on marriage at all, given that I'm in my third marriage. My first marriage was to a girl, right? A woman, a young woman, but we met in high school, right? I just graduated from high school. She was in her last year of high school. We met. After a while, we started living together. Then we got married, and once we got married, I don't think it was 1.5 to 2 years before we got divorced. We just grew up, and we grew in different directions. What she wanted wasn't the same as what I wanted, and we weren't angry at each other. We weren't bitter towards each other. It was just, my path is not consistent with the path she wants to take, and we said, you know what? I think we need to call it good, and we did, and it was amicable, and it was no issue, right? But in waiting older, you become more your own person, so that when you begin to share, right, you can think in terms of where you want to go, and you have a better idea for it. Longer courtship is usually superior. The longer we stay together, probably, the longer we court, the more we get to know each other. Now that can be excessive, obviously. Individuation, differentiation from family of origin. To what extent is the family running the show, or to what extent are we running the show? And let's face it, if we have families that are somewhat inconsistent in their values or their culture, etc., the more we're differentiated from those families, the more we're our own people, then the less influence we fall under. Now, personality. Perfectionism and insecurity might be difficult issues. People who are perfectionists often expect perfection. They expect it out of their partner, and they tend to evaluate their partner negatively in that regard. People who are insecure, that often causes problems as well. And we know that insecurity-jealousy relationship. Someone who's excessively insecure might feel that their partner's cheating on them, and then this gets to be a poison in the relationship, that kind of thinking. So, communication is what it's really about, though. Working towards mutual agreeable solutions and a commitment to doing that. So, shall we talk some adjustment strategies that make marriages work? Well, here's one of my favorites. Establish love maps. Right? And what are love maps? What are love maps? Well, we better break off from our numbered list and get right to that. Let's talk about Gottman and the Gottman Institute. So the Gottmans, married researchers, operate the Gottman Institute, University of Washington at Seattle. This is a full-fledged relationship institute. Probably got 30 years under its belt. I mean, they even have apartments as research labs where couples can stay overnight, and they agree to be videoed, right? And so Gottman can watch behaviors, classify behaviors, look at dimensions within relationships, right? But then he tracks people longitudinally, so he uses what he observes to correlate with longevity. And he's found that he's pretty good at predicting. More on that in a couple minutes. Now, Gottman's found that emotionally intelligent couples are intimately familiar with each other's worlds. They know how they process each other's information. They're likely to successfully predict how each partner will react to a given stimulus, right? This is a love map. This richly detailed knowledge about your partner is your love map for them. It's a part of the brain where you store all the relevant information about your partner's life. Now, I'm not saying that our neuroscientists in the class are going to go in with an fMRI machine and locate a location in the brain for this, right? I think it's more metaphorical as Gottman's talking about it. It's these couples have made plenty of cognitive room in their minds for their relationship. That is, they're cognitively preoccupied with the relationship. Okay? So they're not ignoring each other. They're getting to know and learn about each other. They remember the major events in each other's histories, and they keep updating their information, not going off of just what they learned in the past and calling it good, but they continue to learn about their partner. They continue to explore each other. So as the facts and feelings of their spouse's worlds change, they're sensitive to it. So, adjustment strategies for making marriages work: establish love maps. Be cognitively in touch with your partner and emotionally in touch. They do things that nurture fondness and admiration. So you start to focus on the things that say, oh my God, my partner truly is a wonderful person, and you can be very explicit about why you believe that. And you can provide examples, right? And you admire your partner and their skill. So I'm fortunate with my wife. I look at my wife, and she's a dedicated hard worker, right? Obviously, I'm fond of her, but I admire her. She is the first person in her family to go to college. And she put herself through college. Neither of her parents spent one penny on her college. Not that they could, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, etc. But she picked up from Southern California and went to Washington State, right, on her own. She picked the school. She did the applications. She arranged for the money. She worked her way through school, right? She's continued to educate herself. What does she do now? She's got a great career as a paralegal at Nationwide. She makes, 80% more than I do. She's at the top of her frickin' game. I love watching her work because it's just fascinating to listen to her do her legal processing. It's admiration, right? And that goes a long way to admire your partner. Okay? Turn towards each other instead of away. So when the chips are down, when the shit hits the fan, what do? Do you separate and say, oh my God, I can't even deal with you? Or do you say, wow, this is heavy, this sucks, let's turn towards each other and work through it? Now, to me, one of the greatest points, and I learned this from Dr. Kaufman, Carolyn, and to this day, I have internalized this, not just for a romantic partner, but for example, for people I work with, etc., for close friends. Let your partner influence you. That is, hey, my partner is smart, my partner is savvy, my partner probably knows me as well as I know myself. Let them influence you. Find the people in your life who got a handle on you, right? And listen to them. Allow them to influence you. Go with it. See how it works out, right? Now, that's based on trust, and it's based on a track record. So it's not something, 2 weeks into a relationship, there's a brand new person, and they tell you need to drop out of school and join the Foreign Legion. No, do not let that person influence you because they haven't earned, right? They haven't earned the right to do that yet. But so, solve solvable conflicts. It's going to feel good. Take the easy ones, take the low-hanging fruit, and go ahead and solve it, right? It'll set up a pattern for successfully solving more complex issues in your relationship. Overcome gridlock. So if you're like this, don't go there. Something I learned in EST, we talked about at the very beginning class, Earhart seminar training. I know most of it was bullshit, but one metaphor I loved, or example, if you will, whatever you want to call it, was they talked about gridlock in relationships, and they said, look what happens if you and your partner disagree and you push and you push and you push. You expend a tremendous amount of effort. You can make yourself red in the face pushing, right? But at some point, isn't it just easier and isn't it better just to go with the partner? And he said, notice what happens when you get to that limit. The partner's fully extended. Now it's time to go back, right? So if we can learn to do this rather than get stuck in that gridlock, we'll be online for a more successful partnership. And then create shared meaning. What the hell is your relationship about? What is it for? What are you trying to do? Now, many of you will read like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And we know that ultimately in existential psychology and humanistic psychology and positive psychology, it is, what does life mean? What do I mean? What is my place? But that needs to be done at a second level, at a second layer when you're embedded in a relationship, because what is the joint meaning that you create? So you have two individual meanings, but there's also a joint meaning. What is it for? What are we about? What are we attempting to do? Questions? All right. I want to kind of shift gears. Let's talk about social exchange theory, and now we're going to get economic. I'm going to push love right out the door for the minute, and I'm just going to talk in terms of social exchange theory. If the rewards outweigh the costs, we stay. Notice, this is an economic calculus. What are my rewards in being in this relationship? What are my costs? And as long as the rewards exceed costs, we can predict that I'm going to stay. But this is affected by the outcome of previous relationships and other relationships, right? So we have that baggage. Remember, we come to the relationship with the baggage, our knowledge of relationships that we learned in previous relationships. But we also have the potential to enter into new relationships. And the idea is, if I meet someone new, right, that is someone who's looking attractive, will I stay or will I go? You know that song, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Well, social exchange theory can provide the answer. That is, I weigh the costs versus the rewards, and then I think in terms of what is the potential with this other person, and that can shift the balance, right? So whether a better relationship is available, and this is a very American process, and one of the reasons the divorce rates are so high in America is we have been, at least some people consider it a myth, that there's that perfect partner out there for you. There is a perfect partner. Or, I know a lot of people love the term, I'm not fond of it, as soulmate. Oh my God, they're my soulmate, or I'm looking for my soulmate. I'm looking for that perfect partner, right? And I enter into this relationship, and this partner is like, they're not my soulmate. They're not my perfect partner. Oh, look over there. I wonder, maybe they're more likely to be my perfect partner. So I'm more willing to cut and run, right? Culturally, what we're saying is it's okay to upgrade. And if the current isn't good enough, then probably you should upgrade to a better model. I know. Trade in that used car for that shiny new car. It's a very crass discussion here, I admit it. But what about, hey, there is no perfect partner. There is no soulmate. My relationship is what I make it. And what I make it is really a function of what we both put into it. So if it ain't perfect, what can we do to improve it? Rather than, is there just a better model that exists out there for me? So, how invested we are. Let's take a look quickly at the model. Let's calculate the rewards of the current relationship. But we got to subtract out the costs, right? And then we got to subtract the comparison level. And what this means is, I have an ideal relationship. How close is my current relationship to this ideal pie-in-the-sky theoretical relationship? When I take the rewards and I subtract out the costs, and then the difference between my current relationship and an ideal relationship, I come to a number that represents my satisfaction level. Now, here's the deal. I meet someone new. And I meet this new person and I say, wow, that person's pretty cool. Wow, that person, and let's say that person is closer to what I believe my ideal is. I believe this person is closer. Well, that's going to make me less satisfied. And the more closely this new person, this potential partner, is to my ideal, the more it's going to diminish my satisfaction. Notice we're subtracting it out there. But I say just a second before you think about cutting and running, before you turn your back on your current partner and chase after this new one. What did you invest in your relationship? Are you willing to give it up? So these sunk costs then might keep us in the relationship, although we believe something is better. Ultimately, it's going to be the commitment level, right? And the commitment, if that number is positive, I'm going to stay. If that number is negative, I'm going to go. Welcome to the world of economic modeling of relationships. I love social exchange theory, but it doesn't have a lot of room for love, does it? Let's call this the end of this part and go on to the next one.